It's time for Two Guys and a Goalie with Dustin Nielsen, Matt Cassian, and the goalie, Joaquin Gate.
Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Goal. I don't know what happened there. I was like, where's my voice? I'm trying to talk. I'm not hearing anything. Boys, it's good to see you guys. No shows last week. Cass, you had a nice little vacation with your lady friend.
Yeah, it was
nice.
It was a little vacation, a little work, a little of everything. It was awesome. So we had one of my my old teammates' weddings, Colt the Bolt Gillies. So head out for his weddings and for his wedding in the Okanagan, and celebrated our 10th anniversary while we're out there. Then,
oh, that was your wife. Oh, okay.
yeah, some clients out there too. So it was a little bit of everything, but yeah, it was really good, really hot.
Was it hot?
Really hot.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's gross.
Oh. And that the ceremony, because it was down like in the Oliver area, so kind of south, close to the border and close to Soyuz, and it was at a winery, and it was out like in the vineyards, the ceremony, and there was no shade, and it was toasty. It was toasty, and it was funny. Kyle Turris, so ex-Edmonton Oiler and ex-teammate of mine, he texted me. He's like, "Hey, like I'm here, like just to meet up before." And we weren't able to meet up before the wedding, but we sat together and we're at the same table and all that. And when we got to the winery and got out of the vehicle, I saw this guy in a
Oh no!
suit, and I'm like, "Ooh, that's a tough decision on a day like this."
Wait,
and then
Cass, reset.
So I was like, "Why are you wearing a suit?"
Reset. You froze right when you said, "Oh, you saw a guy in a suit." You said you saw a guy and then you froze, and I was like,
"Oh
no!"
He in? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you. You're back. Yeah.
No, it was a guy in a suit, and it was Kyle Turris, and I just thought to myself, I'm like, "What are you doing?" And apparently, because his wife wasn't able to make it, so she just told him like where the wedding was and sent him the information, but he didn't read any of it. He didn't realize that it was going to be outside, like with no shade in the heat. So he was absolutely dying. It was pretty funny. I mean, but yeah, it ended up being a lot of fun. It was a great trip, and nice to get a little bit of a break.
Yeah, no, at a wedding at a winery, I'm assuming like the reception has a bunch of fancy cheeses. Would that be the?
There was like a charcuterie with some decent cheese. Yep. And they did it. So he married a girl that comes from an Italian family, and so like the dinner was all like big like Italian family style food. So it was really good, really well done. The food was great. I try not to get too much of the cheese. I don't need that stomach action in my life. So I did sample a little bit though.
Gage, you must have been on winery tours at some point in your relationship, eh? Like,
no, not really. I do my own tour, Dusty. I just walk to the liquor store and browse the Rouge and walk back. That's my tour. No cheese, but it works out quite well.
Wine is interesting. Like when we went down to San Francisco before we had kids, we went up to Napa, like did that tour up there, and the all those wineries have little shops with various cheeses. So to me it was a cheese tour, and for my wife it was a wine tour. But I'm lucky because I'm not married to like a woman who wants fine wines. Like I buy like a bottle of wine for $9.99 at the liquor store, and she's like, "Oh, this is delicious." I'm like, "Perfect." $10 bottle of wine. It's like, Cass, where do you guys come out on your bottles of wine? Like,
we're like, I can tell the difference. For me, it's like I got a good food palate.
So you can tell the difference.
It depends. Like up to a point. Like I can tell the difference between like a $10 wine and let's say like a $30 bottle of wine. Like I can tell the difference between those. When you start getting over that 30 to 40 to like the more expensive stuff, I can't tell the difference between like a $40 bottle and like a $100 bottle, generally speaking. Now there was one, because we did a lot of a couple of the touristy tours as well. Just you got to do them once. So we did them at the one place. So we had like where they give you the pairings, and like, I mean, it's supposed to be charcuterie, but it ended up being like one bite food, which it was really good. But I'm like, what is this? Like a charcuterie for ants? Like it was tiny little, like one bite for each glass of wine, or like half glass of wine. And some of those were like, you got a half glass of like a really nice expensive bottle. And there's one or two of those where you could taste, you're like, okay, like I can tell that this is really, 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 really nice. But I could never still, it's like I couldn't justify ever actually paying that much for a bottle. And it's like, you know, I'll be happy with, you know, I'll be happy with a $15 20 bottle. That's all I need. That's good for me. So
Gager, I feel like you were probably popping bottles with McLaren's 2-4 finish in the British Grand Prix this weekend.
Yeah, it was Prosecco, not the real bubbly, but that still works. Yeah, no, I used, well, when you're in the NHL, you have a surplus of funds, so that's when I really started to start enjoying bottles of wine that I would never buy these days. And so,
well, you're drinking wine in the alumni suite, aren't you now? Isn't that? Didn't we talk about that?
Oh yeah, but that's the great one. You gotta sample the great one once in a while.
Yeah, that's true.
But I had so many, because when I first met my wife, and to get her to talk to her more, I think I said this, but I invited her back to my place and brought a bunch of people. But I had the one section of my apartment where the dining room table, there was no dining room table. It was just bottles of wine because I was too lazy to take them to the bottle depot. So it was probably a good like 70 bottles of like I had Duckhorn Cellars and Camus and Opus ones, like stupid bottles of wine in there. And like, it was great because my wife thought I was a drug dealer, not a hockey player. So she was more interested in what I did. That's what she said. So,
wait, whatever works, man. Whatever works. That's for sure. Yeah. Speaking of whining, the Senators traded Alex Debrincat. He gets his way. He moves to the Detroit Red Wings. Kubalik, Donovan Sabrango, conditional 2024 first-round draft pick and the 2024 fourth-round draft pick. Debrincat ends up signing a deal with the Detroit Red Wings. Cass, your thoughts on the Red Wings going out and getting Debrincat and the Sens, you know, giving in and moving him and obviously having some cap space that they can use here as well?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks for Ottawa that you had to move him, that he didn't want to sign there. It hurts their rebuild, hurts their upside, and greatly helps Detroit's. I mean, they're getting, I think, a good player, young player that's coming into his prime that can produce. And to me, I mean, this incrementally inches up that Red Wing rebuild to put a key player in place for them. So, I mean, to me, I think the Senators did okay with it. You're kind of in a tough spot where everybody knew. Yeah, you're in a tough spot. Considering the spot, I'm like, okay, they got a decent return for it, but it does really suck for the Sens. Like I just flipping through the Twitters on everything, I think there was a lot of Sens fans that were just upset that he even wanted out or that he had to go. And I mean, at the end of the day, you can't do anything about that. He wants out, and you need to move him. He's not going to resign, so you have to get something for him. And I think they did okay with that. Like it's a decent return. I didn't see one thing, guys. Did they announce what the conditions were on the first rounder? I don't know if I saw that.
I didn't see him.
I'm assuming it had something to do with a contract being signed. So, and they ended up signing him for a 4-year deal, right? So,
yeah.
I'm just taking a quick look now. Yeah, I didn't see anything right off the top. Conditional first rounder. Nah, it doesn't say on there. So, I mean, they're going to get a first out of it. He just signed 4 years with Detroit. They're going to get a first out of it, I would think. So, Gager, if you're Ottawa, you know, this was a guy that you hoped would come in, kind of what Detroit's doing here, right? They want him to be a piece with the young core that they've got going. Ottawa's a step ahead of that anyway with the Timmy Stutzels and the Kachuk and some of the pieces that they've already got there. If they can make use of this cap space and plus everything you got in return for him, I mean, you could come out of this at least on par with where you were, couldn't you?
Yeah, I don't think you'll see it till next year, Dusty, with the cap going up, right? Like, I'm always scratching my head. I realize Debrincat's 25, wants a little bit more security, but going into a year with that Senators team where they're looking to take a step, I think, good young team, kind of had some injuries. Looks like they're going to be a little bit solidify the goaltending position with Korpisalo, right? And go into maybe sign that 1 year, gamble on yourself, go on a bit of a run, hopefully with the Sens, and then really write your ticket. So yeah, it's a little bit puzzling when I look at that Detroit lineup. I don't see them. It's not like they're not going to make the playoffs next year. I with that lineup, I don't see them doing anything. So, man, I just went for maybe a little bit more security, I guess. But yeah, I find this a little bit of a head scratcher. Why he wouldn't want to stay in Ottawa? It surprises me.
Cass, I got the conditions on that pick just in case it does change anything. It's basically Detroit has the option to send their own or Boston's 2012 first round pick, depending on some top 10 stuff. So it's a first round pick. It's just a matter of which first round pick it's going to be. So they are getting the first round pick in the deal. I saw some people in Ottawa talking about how maybe the Sens can use this money on Tarasenko. I saw some other people that thinks it would be a terrible idea. And to be honest with you, that one doesn't make a lot of sense to me for where Ottawa is at right now, right? That just seems out of sync with what they've got going on there, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, you're not getting. I don't want to say Tarasenko doesn't have gas in the tank. If he stays healthy, I think he's a player that can still produce, still provide, still be a key part of a team. But the Sens are 2 to 3 years away still, and it's like, okay, well, then you're really looking at it. So you're looking at, well, you want Tarasenko in 4 years or 3 years? Is he going to be at his peak? When for the Sens, it's like, okay, in 2 to 3 years, probably 3, I would say that's when your real window is going to be for the Senators to really make a push. If they're able to keep building, if they don't, lose assets, if they don't have players that all just want out, like 3 years is when you're going to be a challenger, I think, for the Ottawa Senators in terms of your development. You'll still have a solid defensive core. Tkachuk will be in his prime. You'll have some. Stützle will hopefully be in his prime. Like you're going to have this build up there, and to me, Tarasenko is probably going to be degrading at that point. So. Do you have the cap space for it? Well, yeah, you probably do, but is it going to be the wisest use of that cap space?
Buddy, that cap space 2 to 3 years from now will be more important than what Tarasenko does, right? Like that's just how today's NHL work. Like that's just how it works. There's just, I think you got to have that cap space. If you've got a really good core like that, and then you're like, okay, now we're close to have the cap space. Imagine if the Oilers right now had the proper cap space to get the final 2 pieces or whatever they needed, right? Like if the Sens can put themselves in that spot, I think that probably ends up putting them ahead when it's all said and done. So anyway, Ottawa making some news here, obviously, with the Debrincat trade. A couple other things I want to get to in this episode of Two Guys and a Goalie, brought to you as always by our great partners at Coolbet on the Nielsen Media Coolbet Network. Check out everything at coolbet.com. Lots of CFL football betting over there. There's some NHL futures posted as well. And of course, NFL betting only about 2 months away as well. Let's say Kailer Yamamoto, Seattle Kraken. Gager, what are your thoughts on Yamamoto landing with the Kraken?
Going home, which is one cool thing, gets to play closer to where he grew up in Spokane, I believe. It makes sense to me. Who did they lose? They lost Sprung, right? So maybe he fits in a little bit in that space. I did like that Sprung on the power play though. That guy,
he ended up in Detroit.
Killer. Yeah. So opportunity there for him. I think he plays along kind of that kind of Kraken style. I think it'll work out quite well for Yamo, to tell you the truth. So just as long as he doesn't play well against the Oilers, I'm fine with it.
Cass, are you not a little bit like Detroit has like $8 million in cap space? They could have just kept Yamamoto for the year at $3 million. Instead, they bought him out $500K or $488 or whatever for a couple of years. Are you surprised that they didn't want to take him for a run?
For a team that's rebuilding, it's not like you would have had him for the long term. So, a little bit surprised. You end up with dead cap space in that instance instead of a player where you're just like, okay, well, you don't have to lock into him long term. But maybe they're just not wanting to have to deal with arbitration or because he would still be an RFA.
He has a year left, and then he'd be an RFA after that.
And then the RFA. So I think it's a little surprising.
Because you could have just not qualified him at the end of next year and let him go anyway, right? So
and then you're not getting hit with a cap. And it's not like you got a massive return.
And they're paying Costin $2 million a year.
That was a little bit surprising, especially if you had looked at and you looked at Seattle. It's like, because what is it? I mean, I'm just trying to think. I don't think if they would have traded them to eat some of the cap space, you could have maybe eaten a little bit and traded them to Seattle. I don't know. I mean, it was a little surprising.
Yeah,
it's only what 4-3-3 this year, 5-3-3 next year. So
yeah, but
maybe this year.
I mean, they must just not have seen him as a usable player at all. Really, I mean, it's just you give him nothing to get him, and. It just, I don't know. It's basically the Detroit Red Wings took a Yamamoto buyout to get Costin at $2 million.
Which really makes them like 2.5, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's costing at 2.5.
So they really like clean Costin, I guess.
It's a kick-ass case of wine from the Okanagan showing up to Stevie Y's place, I think. I don't know what it is. Cass, you might have tried some of it, but that's probably what it boils down to.
All right, a couple other things I want to get to, and we haven't had a chance to really dive into the free agency stuff yet. So just with the Oilers and Leafs on this episode, and then we'll dive into a few of the other teams on future episodes. But it's simple: better or worse? Cass, the Edmonton Oilers, after free agency, the dust is kind of settled here on everything. I know some people still are hoping that they land another bottom six forward, but as of right now, and if we want to take into consideration, growth from within the organization and guys continuing to be better, and I'll lay out the Leafs changes for you when we get to them. But for the Edmonton Oilers, they managed to go out and get Connor Brown, but they're down a few guys as well who left in free agency. Yamamoto's no longer around. Costin won't be back with this group. Cass, are the Oilers better or worse right now?
I think they're a little better. I mean, Connor Brown, and I know people worried about the injury, and you don't necessarily totally know with him coming back, from a major knee surgery, but I mean, he's a proven offensive producer. And I think you're probably a little bit better, slightly, not massively, but I think you're slightly better. Now you are going to miss where it would be nice to find in the bottom six another guy that can bring some of the physicality like Costin did, because I think he did a good job of that. If you could find something like that, I think, you do another step up, but I would say just marginally, slightly, just a little bit better, for the Oilers.
Gager, what do you think, man? I'm kind of like, meh. They I don't think they're worse. Not sure they're better.
No, they're really, really good still. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You can't, I don't know. The only thing that I could see that would make the Oilers better is adding a one or two defensemen, right? Like that's what makes them better. I think they have good enough goaltending to get to the playoffs. One of them has to find another level to their game at that point, but they're a solid team, man. And to the fan and me, can't wait to see if Connor Brown and Connor McDavid start looking like they did in junior. That'd be cool to see a little bit of chemistry of that, and just give Woodcroft another arrow in the quiver to implement throughout the season, right?
Yeah, you are right. I mean, they're still really good. Whether they're like significantly better, they're slightly different, not a lot different. You'll see what happens with the bottom six. I mean, I thought last year especially after they got Bukestad, they kind of finally established a bottom six that you could rely on. And right now, their bottom six is a little questionable to me, but that's something you can address throughout the season as well, right? Which is, I'm sure, something that Ken Holland will be looking at. The Toronto Maple Leafs are an interesting one, boys. They got busy. Domi, Reeves, Bertuzzi, Klingberg. Obviously, there is a bunch of guys from that team that are not going to be back as well, that they decided to move on to, with Bunting and some of the other guys, Kerfoot. So it's Ryan O'Reilly. It's a different look. Cass, what do you think? Are the Leafs better or worse?
Yeah. I think they're more playoff ready.
Okay.
Like they got a more playoff ready team, I think. Not that, yeah. I mean, I like some of the grit addition. Not that Reeves is going to play a lot, but I like the grit like Domi brings. I love Bertuzzi as a playoff player. Like in those two guys right there, Reeves is Reeves. He's going to be good in the room. He'll add some edge. Not going to play every night. May not play that much in the playoffs. Don't know. But Domi and Bertuzzi will, and the Bertuzzi one in particular for me. And it's pretty rare that like to pull a player up from the States in like a UFA like that. Like it's pretty rare for a team to be able to do that. So good for Toronto. I think they're better. I think they're better. Now the big question will be, can Klingberg do what he needs to on the back end to make this team better? But in the forward group, I mean, I really like Bertuzzi, the Bertuzzi edition in particular. He's a pesky player. He's hard to play against. He can put up points. He's got a playoff style. Domi, maybe not quite on the points level, but same thing in that he's a physical guy, not huge guy, but physical guy that is engaged or will be engaged. I think has the ability to play well in the playoffs. So to me, I think they're better. They might not be better in the regular season by miles, but I think they're a better.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
As of today.
Yeah, I could see that. Gager, I know. Is it killing you to say that they're better? I get like the look on your face. I feel like you're like, they're better, but I don't want to say that they're better.
Yeah, mate. Do these guys put them over the? So because they're a great regular season team, though, right? Like,
yeah.
They're
I think that's
solid.
why Cass pointed to the playoffs. You think they'll be better in the playoffs, but
yeah, it's tough. Like Bertuzzi, I thought was good in the playoffs. Domi, I didn't think had an okay play. I think their biggest problem is team defense, and does that make them? I can't say whether I have to see it, Dusty. On paper, I think it's a little bit tougher, obviously, and might provide them with they can grow a few inches with some of the top guys, but does this make them? I don't know. There's too many holes still for me.
Well, we'll have to find out come playoff time. They're certainly going to be a playoff team again. And so that's Oilers and Leafs. We'll continue to look at the rest of these teams in Canada as well as we work our way through the summer here on Two Guys and a Goalie. Obviously, we'll have our much talked about top 50 players heading into next season. We can start debating that once August hits as well. Before I wrap up today, I was flying home from Vancouver this morning, and the plane, the lady, she just closed the door. Like, just was like, okay, everybody's on the plane now. So we hadn't been on there for 10 minutes. And it was still loud and people were still walking on. And there was a dude behind me already, not just asleep, but snoring very loudly. And I wasn't even, like, it didn't bother me because I was guy on plane coughing for the last 4 days. So that's even worse. But I was just amazed that somebody could fall asleep while the plane was still boarding in an aisle seat and already be snoring before they hadn't even done like the announcements yet. It was, I fly a lot lately and I'd never seen anything like that. That was impressive.
That's what the Roxy will do to you, Dusty. One day the Rock, you got to get your sleep the next day. But I'm pretty close to that. I can do that.
Can you really?
Asleep, really?
Oh, but you're not as small. How can you fall? Like the planes are so small. Like if I sit how normal people sit, like when you sit in a plane seat, it's like that. Even the curve of the back, Dusty would be the same thing. It's like I can't get comfortable. I can't get comfortable. And so to be able to do that, I mean, props to that guy. But there's no way. There's no way, Gager. I don't get like how. I don't know how you fall asleep on a plane.
It's because when I was 17 and I went to the Kamloops Blazers training camp and I stayed till like October, and the veterans were terrible. Like one guy wouldn't, like, he slept on the floor, but he was like, so usually a rookie could sit on his seats, but he pulled his seats out because he felt claustrophobic. So you couldn't even sit in here. What? I had to go shoulder to shoulder with another rookie and we weren't allowed to push our seats back. So just go from Kamloops to Tri-Cities or whatever, straight up. And I just, over those few months, I learned how to just go right to sleep, just sitting straight up. So
I wish, man. It sucks. Like, I'm usually emergency row at minimum. I've got enough Aeroplan points now that I try to get upgrades quite a bit, but even in the emergency row, I still have a hard time getting comfortable. Like if I fall asleep on a plane, it's because I've slept for like 2 hours in 2 days. And my whole body's just like, sorry, dude, got to shut down out. Like I even gave the guy the slow look because I heard him snoring before I'm like, oh my God, is this even possible? So I'm looking, sure enough, he's just fucking out. He's just done. I was like, good for you, buddy. Like that was amazing. That was something I won't forget quite some time. So, all right, boys. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Two Guys and a Goalie, brought to you by our great partners at CoolBet. If you've been watching this on YouTube or Twitter, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on all your podcasting platforms, Two Guys and a Goalie. Good place to get some content in a market that's kind of lacking it right now. Guys, we'll talk to you later in the week.
Awesome. Later, boys.
Bye.